Sick of annoying spam calls? RoboKiller eliminates 99% of unwanted calls. Download RoboKiller today.
In Nashville, Tennessee, a nurse who was distracted and administered the wrong medication to a 75-year-old patient has been convicted of criminally negligent homicide. Tonight, we hear from the nurse.
I know what I have done, and I know what I've taken away from her family.
In Lansing, Michigan, Georgian Melvin DeJesus spent 25 years in prison for a murder they did not commit. Tonight, they are free. Why did our system get this one wrong?
There was nothing that connected either George or Melvin to that scene.
On the docket tonight, the next live trial on Court TV in Nashville, Tennessee. A barroom brawl spills into the streets and two men are stabbed and killed. Now, Michael Mosely is facing 2 counts of murder.
If he didn't think his life was in danger, this would not have happened.
Plus, the Supreme Court rules that a death row inmate has the right to have a pastor praying with him at his execution. Tonight's 13th question. Do you think convicted killers should have someone there by their side praying as they are executed? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And I want to begin tonight with a conversation we've had in the past. But it's an important conversation, extremely important, and it's one of those decisions that prosecutors have to make that I believe are the most difficult decisions. When is an accident a crime? When is behavior? You do something, you don't intend to do it, you don't intend the result, but you mess up, you totally mess up. It's all your fault, and you've taken the life of someone else. But you had no intention to do it, none whatsoever. Maybe you're even doing your job while it happened. So when should instances like that turn into criminal prosecutions? Because you know we have 2 systems of justice, a civil system that deals with things like this all the time. You do something, it causes damage to me, could be wrongful death, I sue you, or my estate sues you, or my family sues you. And it's you know, it could be litigated, it could be denied, but if there's liability, if you're responsible for the death, then some insurance company somewhere will pay money to the victims or the victim's family. Then there's the criminal system, which is much different. It's not about money. It's about taking away someone's liberty, that you have crossed the lines of social norms and you should not be a free human being. Big difference. Big difference. So let's talk about some of the cases that we've had here. And I think the results sometimes might be connected to the line of work that the people are in. Let's be Kim Potter. Remember her? She killed Dante Wright. She didn't intend to. She didn't know she had a loaded gun in her hand. She thought she had a taser. She yelled, taser, taser, taser. Killed Dante Wright. It was 1,000% her fault. There was no one else to blame. She didn't intend it. But the prosecutor in that case, looking at this police officer, stressing that this was a trained police officer. And because this trained police officer made this mistake while doing her job, she committed a crime without intending any harm in that case. Let's take a look at another case we've been looking at. It's not over yet. Alec Baldwin, he's still under investigation. But let me tell you something. Every time I on the show, whether it's with my think tank, whether it's with you on social media, people are, why are you going after Alec Baldwin? I'm like, I'm not going after Alec Baldwin. I'm just saying, what's the difference between Alec Baldwin and Kim Potter? He didn't think he had a loaded gun in his hand. Just like Kim Potter didn't think she had a loaded gun in her hand. They're both at work. And they both are responsible for the death of someone. They shot and killed someone. Neither one of them intended it to happen. So that's under investigation, and so many people respond to that and say, no, it's not his fault. It was somebody else's fault. The armorer, someone else, the assistant director, not Alec Baldwin. So because he's an actor, do we look at him differently than we look at a police officer? When it comes to deciding whether or not an accident is a crime, does it depend upon your profession? How about doctors? Doctors. How many times have you seen a doctor on trial for murder, manslaughter, whatever it is, for an accident? I'm not talking about like Dr. Yuso's accused of murder, right? Not doctors who are stone cold drunk in the operating room. No, doctors who are doing their job, but doing it extremely poorly. I mean, I'm trying to think of cases where they've been charged with homicide. There are tons of malpractice cases. That's on the civil side. Doctors get sued all the time when they commit malpractice. And there's nothing, I mean, that's the way the system works. But do we hold doctors to a different standard? Or when a doctor commits malpractice, when is that accidental killing of another human being a crime and not just malpractice? These are tough decisions for prosecutors, but I'm trying to think, I may be totally wrong here. But from my own memory, from cases as a prosecutor myself, from covering the nation's biggest high-profile cases, and if you got a doctor on trial, it's going to be high profile. I'm having a hard time thinking of a doctor accidentally killing someone during the course of whatever he's doing and then being handcuffed and charged with homicide. Can't think of it. It may exist. We'll find out. Now, let's get to the case that was on Court TV today. Nurse Redonda Vaught. She's a nurse. She absolutely is responsible for the death of a 75-year-old woman. Gave her the wrong medicine. She killed her. She absolutely killed her. There was no accusation that she did it on purpose, just that she was had really bad day at work. Like, didn't follow the protocols that you're supposed to follow. Totally messed up, 1,000% her fault. But in this case, prosecutor said it was so bad, so outrageous, you should be charged with a crime. And she was. And this is such an important case because what we're talking about here is she's a nurse. She works in a profession that is inherently dangerous. Lives are on the line. I make a mistake, nobody dies. When I was a lawyer and I made a mistake, nobody dies. I can get sued, could lose the case, but nobody's dying. But if you're a nurse, it's very, very possible. And is she a target because she's a nurse, not a doctor? I don't know. This is a very unusual case, but here's the verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Redonda Leanne Vaught, guilty of gross neglect of an impaired adult.
As to count 2, what is the jury's verdict?
We, the jury, find the defendant, Redonda Leanne Vaught, not guilty.
As to count 2, the lesser included offense, what is the jury's verdict?
We, the jury, find the defendant, Redonda Leanne Vaught, guilty of criminally negligent homicide.
Thank you. You may be seated.
2 convictions. She's now a convicted felon. She was a nurse. She is now a convicted felon for the accidental death of a patient, which was horrible, horrible. She's responsible. But again, making that decision to take this behavior in our society, how far do we take this? Let me just throw an example out there, just at the top of my head, right? Because we're going to cover a story like this, where 2 men were wrongfully convicted of murder and spent 25 years behind bars. What if it's a case where they went to death row and they were executed? Then we found out that it was a wrongful conviction. Mistakes were made by investigators. Mistakes were made by prosecutors. Should we be prosecuting them for homicide? I think you understand where I'm going with this, that I want to know where that line is. I want to know where that line is. I want you to hear now from the nurse who was convicted today, but she spoke to WTVF's Chris Davis, our great affiliate, before the verdict came down. While the jury was deliberating, she decided to speak. Take a listen.
I'll say after this week has been done, yesterday afternoon, whenever I left, it was a big weight lifted off my shoulders. And when I say weight, I mean the weight of this legal process, not the weight of Ms. Murphy's life being lost. I want to make that really clear because that's something that will always be with me. Anytime you take care of a patient and you have some sort of a thing that bonds you, you don't, good or bad, you don't forget that as a nurse or as any good healthcare provider. Today, what the jury decides is going to have more of an impact on the nursing community and healthcare overall than it's going to have on me personally, because I know what I have done and I know what I've taken away from her family, and I know that ultimately I know what I'm responsible for. It's going to have an impact on transparency in healthcare. And anytime you hold someone's life in your hands, you have an obligation to do the best you can. And if you don't, you have an obligation to tell the truth and to make it very clear to those around you that can make changes to make it better. This is what I did. Everything. I left no stone unturned. And I think that it's important, regardless of what this jury comes back. I don't want the nursing community to lose sight of that. The truth will set you free. And it doesn't matter if, I'm found guilty of these charges and Judge Smith decides that, I have to go serve time for this. My life will move forward. But the impact that it's going to have on people in healthcare is going to be tragic. It's very obvious by the district attorney's actions and the assistant DAs that are prosecuting this case, all three of them, and their lies. It is very obvious. They don't know about healthcare. They don't give a about nurses. I don't care what Chad Jackson says. And you know what I have to say to the nursing community and the healthcare community? When you see those individuals walk through the doors of your facilities, because they will eventually, you remember what you were taught in nursing school. You treat them just like you would every other patient, and you take care of them just like you would every other patient, because that is what people deserve when they walk through the doors of our healthcare facilities. They do not deserve to be berated and dragged through the mud with that ridiculous display of lies yesterday. That is what sets healthcare workers apart from people like them. We hold ourselves to a higher level of accountability than they ever will.
One point that she made there, I was thinking about, is you'll have the right to remain silent. We know about that, right? So if you now are a nurse or a doctor and something goes south, what do? Do you lawyer up? Do you get your union rep? What do you do? I mean, this has impact. And I'm not saying the jury got it wrong, but we really need to flush this out tonight. Let's bring in the think tank. Joining us tonight in New York City, former senior homicide prosecutor, knows all about homicide cases, Bernardo Villalona. In Cleveland, Ohio, criminal defense attorney Ian Friedman. No one's better in Ohio or other places as well. And in San Diego, California, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor. He's been on both sides. You can always contact him at brianwatkinslaw.com. Brian Watkins is with us. Great panel tonight. Let's start. Where's the line? Where is the line? Does it depend upon the conduct, your profession, the level of danger? When do accidents become crimes here? Because I don't know if this is a trend or I'm just noticing it, I'm just opening my eyes, but it seems like we've got, on the one hand, very aggressive prosecutors prosecuting accidents, And on the other hand, we've got people being let loose who are career criminals, but that's another discussion for another time. Let's focus on the accidents turning into crimes. Bernarda Villalona.
This is a sad case, Vinnie. This is a sad case, Vinnie. But I think the problem is that when you are in a position where you specialize, and I mean specialize where you have extensive training to not get it wrong, and you have extensive responsibility to the point that one bad move can lead to the death of another individual, that's why the prosecution will go forward on a person such as a nurse who administers the wrong medication. It's a sad case, Vinnie, but even though we may feel bad for her, I'm sure that the family that is affected by her mistake, by her negligence, doesn't. Where I think it's going to come down to is the sentencing. The judge is going to take into account that it wasn't intentional, even though we know she wasn't charged with an intentional homicide, but more of the overworked hours, how many hours she was working, what was going on that day. And I think they'll take that into account in order to determine what type of sentence she should face. I don't think she's going to get jail time.
You know, we have a nursing shortage in this country, Ian Friedman.
Yes.
That's another issue. I mean, we need them. We don't want to deter them from getting into the profession, but we want them to do their jobs on the other hand. What impact does something like this? Does this deter other nurses from entering nursing, or does it deter them from, you know, kind of not paying attention at work and make them better nurses?
So I don't know if it's going to deter people from getting into the field, but what it will do is deter them, just as Nurse Vaught just said, from reporting their mistakes. It's one thing if you know that there may be disciplinary issues, licensing issues, but to now stand before a jury of your peers with the prospect of going to prison, they're likely not going to want to report any sort of mistake. So I do think it could have some real chilling effect here. It's a really sad case all around. It goes to your opening, Vinnie, as to, you know, what cases should be prosecuted and not. And there is no equation to it. It's simply who's prosecuting it and a million other factors as you opened up. This was a sad case. I didn't feel it should be prosecuted. I'm with Bernarda in that I hope that there is no prison sentence, even though I fully recognize the tragedy to the family in this case. But it's not going to help the situation to send her to prison.
Brian Watkins, you've been on both sides. Where's your line?
You know, this was a terrible prosecution, and judges need to step up and not let cases like this go past a preliminary hearing. Judges need to step up and say, the law is this. The bottom line here is there's this thing in the law called a mens rea, okay, which is the evil intent in your mind when you commit a crime. And when you're talking about prosecuting accidents, that's absent. The only way you can prosecute an accident is if the person did something intentionally, recklessly, knowing that something bad could happen, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway, and then it does happen, even though they weren't intending it to happen. But we need to have a situation like this, which is a complete accident, and the prosecution goes forward, there's no purpose. The purpose in our criminal justice system is threefold. A, to deter others. Do we get that out of this? No. No one was intentionally going to commit an accident like that. To rehabilitate the defendant. Is this nurse going to be rehabilitated? Does she need rehabilitation? No. And then the third thing is to punish the mens rea, or the evil mind that did something knowingly wrong. Is that present here? No. So all the three things about our criminal justice systems are absent. And then if you do this trial and you don't send her to prison, what good do? We wasted a bunch of money, and a bunch of nurses are scared out of their mind now that, you know, one little slip up, they could go to jail. It's not going to deter anyone from committing an accident, because it was just that, an accident. And there is a defense called mistake of fact, at least in California. And that defense, a judge should have said, prosecution, you don't meet the burden. You have not proven, you have evidence for all these elements, and don't let this go to a jury, because juries are often swayed by the result. They see a crying family and a jury wants to do something about it, not taking into deep consideration what the law is. And so the judges here dropped the ball by letting this even go to trial. The prosecutions, of course, dropped the ball by bringing it, but the judge shouldn't have let it happen.
Great analysis by everybody. When we come back, speaking of mistakes, how about not one, but two members of the same family wrongfully convicted for a murder? Now they're set free. That was a mistake, wasn't it? We'll talk about what's happening with the De Jesus brothers in Michigan who are free tonight.
At drive10.com.
The only scientific evidence at the scene belonged to Brandon Gohagan. For advanced DNA testing, there was nothing that connected either George or Melvin to that scene. Nothing.
This next story is going to get you angry. I know it will. It's not. Could you imagine if two members of the same family, like not just one person, but two members, brothers, George and Melvin De Jesus, both get wrongfully convicted for murder and both spend 25 years in prison? outrageous. And you heard what their attorney said. I mean, the evidence, there was someone that was good for the crime. But for whatever reason, prosecutors made some deal with him to implicate 2 innocent people. In addition, like, why do you need to convict 3 people if you got the person who committed the crime? Simon Shynet from our great affiliate WXYZ in Detroit has the story of the DeJesus brothers who are, thank goodness, free tonight.
The DeJesus brothers have prayed for this day for roughly 2.5 decades, and now they are thanking the Conviction Integrity Unit of the Attorney General's Office and the Michigan Innocence Clinic for proving their innocence. An emotional celebration for George and Melvin DeJesus and their families after roughly 25 years in prison for a Pontiac murder they did not commit. The men serving time in prisons in Coldwater and Ionia set free after a team from the Michigan Innocence Clinic spent 6 years to find new evidence.
This is the best day of my life. We're extremely happy. We're extremely overwhelmed. I want to say it's been a long time coming. And it took a lot of help. It took a lot of people.
In Pontiac, investigators say the 2 brothers were tied to a killing of a woman in July of 1995 after the victim was found naked in her basement with wires binding her neck, wrists, and ankles. But Attorney General Dana Nessel's team says while Brandon Gohagen confessed to the sexual assault, he cut a deal to blame the murder on the DeJesus brothers, despite them both having alibis at the time.
The only scientific evidence at the scene belonged to Brandon Gohagen. For advanced DNA testing, there was nothing that connected either George or Melvin to that scene. Nothing.
Assistant AG Robin Frankel telling us the break came by way of a fresh review, a closer look at Gohagen, who was later imprisoned in a strikingly similar case.
The prime witness was 20 years later convicted of a very similar event and sentenced to life in prison. And when we looked at those 2 cases and we saw this case and the new one were so similar, we started pulling at the thread.
She says a dozen more women were also found to have been sexually assaulted by Gohagen, and his credibility unraveled, especially as the only witness in the case against the DeJesus brothers. The Oakland County Prosecutor's Office has agreed with the new findings and the exonerations. Currently, the state's CIU has 1,600 other requests for assistance, as George DeJesus expresses his gratitude for those who never stopped fighting in the name of truth.
I want to thank the Innocence Project, Cooley. I want to thank Innocence Clinic and U of M. I want to thank the CIU Conviction Integrity, Dana Nessel.
These cases mark the 3rd and 4th wrongful convictions overturned by the Conviction Integrity Unit of the Michigan Attorney General's Office. Simon Shaquette, 7 Action News.
I'm amazed that the brothers can smile, but I understand why they're smiling. I can't smile about this tonight, though, because it's outrageous. Gohagen is the guy, right? And think about what prosecutors did here. By wrongfully convicting these 2 guys, they cut a deal with the other guy who gets out and kills someone else and rapes countless others, all those other victims, because of the actions of the prosecutor. I wonder if we should prosecute that prosecutor. Let's bring back in our think tank, Bernardo Villalona, Ian Friedman, Brian Watkins. You know, I'm hard on prosecutors. Bernardo, I know you are too when they're not doing the right thing. Ian, should I be shocked tonight? Should I be shocked tonight by this?
I don't think you should be shocked. We see this all too often. I mean, while I'm thrilled for the DeJesus brothers, kind of, that they got out. They've lost 25 years of their life. I think back over the last 25 years of my life and just think about what they missed out. Well, I'm happy for them. I'm sad for all of those others who are sitting in cells right now because of mistakes in courtrooms, overzealous prosecutors, and many other reasons. This happens, and it's real. And people who are not concerned with what happens in the criminal justice system, they should be for this very reason. People who don't do anything wrong can end up in a cell. And that means any one of the viewers of your program tonight. That's the sad, real reality of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, Brian Watkins, you're a former prosecutor. I mean, basing your case on the solely on the testimony of the admitted sexual assaulter, like the guy who sexually assaulted the woman who was murdered, and He's the one that gets the deal, and he's the one that you're going to believe and trust to point the finger. And then because you did that, another woman was sexually assaulted and murdered, and countless others were sexually assaulted. This is beyond outrageous.
It is, and I don't like the use of snitches. I don't believe them, but prosecutors do it all the time. You look at Sammy the Bull Gravano and John Gotti. Sammy admitted to killing 22 people. John Gotti technically hadn't killed anybody, but he says, well, he told me to do it, and you let him go. And he gets out there and starts, dealing ecstasy while, John Gotti dies in prison. Now, I'm not saying both of those guys, I'm saying both of those guys should have been in prison, but here's the real problem. Think about it. A woman was tied up, sexually assaulted, bound, found naked, dead in her basement. A jury is going to want blood from someone. And that's what I was saying earlier. And so you're like praising these brothers, but at the time the crime was committed, people wanted justice. And we have a terrible justice system. The problem is it's the best of a terrible justice system. It's the best of the worst. We can't get it right all the time. A crime has happened. Someone was murdered. We got to figure out who did it. And the evidence points to these guys, and we convicted them. What do you want us to do? We can't solve every crime. That's the problem.
Bernard Villalona, when you're in the shoes of the prosecutor, you have a lot of decisions to make. But to give the deal to the guy who sexually assaulted the woman who was murdered, I don't know. I just think he's the most likely suspect for the murder. Like, why would these two brothers come in and kill her after you sexually assaulted her? Makes no sense. It's beyond, they convinced the jury, obviously, of the whole thing, but you as a prosecutor are part of the filter through which all of this, you've got to figure it out, right?
Exactly, Vinnie. This is so upsetting. I mean, my blood is boiling every time you say one word about this case, because the thing is that the power of the prosecutor has so much power and so much discretion. And I know one thing that I definitely emphasized when I was working as a prosecutor to the baby ADAs and the baby prosecutors, look, one day lost in jail is a day that a person can't get back, and that one day can change their life for the rest of their life. Now, just imagine these men who lost 25 years of their life. As a prosecutor, 16 years, I think I rarely ever used a cooperator. And the reason why is because cooperators are very desperate and are willing to do and say anything in order to get their end of the bargain. I really want to know, what corroboration did this prosecutor have to be able to make the decision that I am going to cut this man a deal to testify against these two other people? That's what I want to know, because there's no way that I'm moving forward on a prosecution without any outside corroboration that these people had something to do with it. I'm not basing it on your word.
Absolutely. And you have to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. You, as an ethical prosecutor, should also be convinced way beyond a reasonable doubt that you've got the right person for the crime. Didn't happen here. Still ahead. On the docket tonight, the next live trial on Court TV in Nashville, Tennessee. A barroom brawl spills into the streets and two men are stabbed and killed. Now, Michael Mosely is facing 2 counts of murder.
If he didn't think his life was in danger, this would not have happened.
Plus, the Supreme Court rules that a death row inmate has the right to have a pastor praying with him at his execution. Tonight's 13th juror question. Do you think convicted killers should have someone there by their side praying as they are executed?
Download Earnin.
I'm Vinnie Politan. On the docket tonight, the next live trial here on Court TV comes to us out of Nashville, Tennessee. Tragic story. Two young men get into an altercation. It spills out into the street. They end up stabbed. The third gets stabbed in the eye but survives. And now Michael Mosely on trial for double murder. Court TV legal correspondent Julie Janae has the story.
On December 21st, 2019, at 2:52 a.m., police respond to reports of a stabbing at the Dogwood Bar in downtown Nashville. Investigators quickly identify a suspect, Michael Mosely, based on surveillance video and eyewitness statements. Police say the incident began inside the bar with a dispute, possibly over a woman, then spilled outside onto the street. Two men, Clay Beathard and Paul Trapini, were fatally stabbed. Beathard was a college football standout. His brother CJ plays in the NFL. A third victim, AJ Bethram, survived the attack. After a days-long statewide search, police apprehend Mosely in a vacant house on Christmas Day. On June 4th, 2020, a grand jury indicts Michael Mosely on 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as attempted first-degree murder and assault. Mosely is claiming self-defense. If convicted, he faces life in prison.
All right, so let's talk about this concept of self-defense in a scenario like this. Our think tank still with us: Bernardo Villalona, Ian Friedman, Brian Watkins. Brian Watkins, I'll begin with you. Self-defense. I think what the defense is going to allege is that he was outnumbered. You know, there's 2 or 3 guys against just one of him. That's what he's going to allege. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's what he's going to allege. If a jury buys that, you allowed to pull out a knife and start stabbing people?
You know, that's a tough question. You know, normally when you're in a fist fight, you can't use a weapon to level the playing field. But when you're outnumbered, and if you were at risk of immediate great bodily injury and or death, then you can. The question is what was happening? Yeah, if it was 3-on-1, I believe you can use a weapon. The question is going to be, how did he use the weapon? Did he, thrust it forward to get them off of him, and 2 of them, got stabbed in critical areas and therefore ended up dying? Or was he chasing them down and stabbing them? So the question is going to be, what was the scenario and how was the knife used? Was it used as an offensive weapon or a defensive weapon? That's going to be the whole key to the case.
Dozens and dozens of people there as all this is happening, Bernardo. But let me ask you, how important is it about who started the fight or the altercation, the argument, the way, and then it rolls into a physical fight? How important are those facts versus the fact that he has a knife and the men who got stabbed had no weapons?
So who started the fight is really important, because you got to think, when you're talking about self-defense, there's also the issue of who was the initial aggressor. Because in most states, if you are the initial aggressor, meaning you started this altercation, you brought it upon yourself, then you can't avail yourself to self-defense.
Well, let me stop you right there, though, because I want to make it clear here. What is considered starting everything? Is it getting in someone's face, or is it throwing a punch?
In this case, I wouldn't say the usage of words. I think for initial aggressor, it has to be some showing of force, some showing of physical force, because you can't also claim self-defense because of the mere usage of words. Even if someone says is threatening to kill you, when there's no corroboration.
Well, what I'm saying here is this scenario. Let's say he starts, and again, we'll see how it plays out in court. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals here. If he is screaming, he starts the verbal confrontation, but then they shove him, and then he pulls out the knife at that point. If he's going 1-on-3, is that going to be okay for him if he starts the verbal altercation, but they start the physical altercation?
I'm going to have a problem with that. I'll have a problem. That's why I wouldn't be selected on that jury.
Yeah. Ian, your thoughts about this scenario? It's going to be messy. You're going to have a lot of witnesses that were there. Everyone's out there having a good time, so everyone's probably going to be a little bit under the influence of something, last call. They're out in the streets of Nashville. What are the important things that we should be looking for as we listen to the testimony in this case and try to figure out if this is actually self-defense or this is a man who is murdering people.
Yeah, so as I look at this from the legal perspective, this case really does present just a number of interesting yet challenging legal issues. So here they are. His lawyer in an interview previously stated, look, I saw the tape. The tape's going to tell the tale. I think we've all learned from recent trials that we can't make any predictions until the entire tape is seen. That's one issue. The second issue as to defending himself, sure, he can get involved in a verbal altercation with someone. He could probably even get involved in a physical altercation with someone, even if he's the aggressor. If other people are then coming unexpectedly that he didn't provoke, can he make a self-defense claim against those people? That's an interesting issue for the jury as well. Then you also have the issue of flight, right? He left, it took a day to find him, and the jury instructions say that, hey, that can be used as an indication of guilt. That's going to be a very interesting issue as well in the case. And then I think the bigger one is he's got prior convictions, 2 for assault, 1 in which he's serving a 12-year sentence for right now. This is where it's really going to come down to just to the lawyering and the level of lawyering. They got to get creative, because if he takes the stand, I think those assaults come in. And that's not going to sit well with the jury when they're trying to figure out, is this a peaceful guy or is this a violent guy? So this lawyer is really thinking about, can I make this case through the video, through the other witnesses in this case? He's got to do it. Usually in self-defense, you put your person on the stand. This is one of those cases where you're going to do everything to see if you can make your case without putting him on. So it's really a fascinating case from this perspective.
Yeah, and the case he's serving 12 years on, that was all caught on video in a Walmart. Show that to the jury, how he jumped this woman. But the woman he was going after was charged with the murder of, I believe, his brother. So it's very layered and complicated, but it all starts Monday. Take a look, folks. Trial date, March 28th. That is Monday. Tennessee versus Michael Mosely, right here on your front row seat to justice. When we come back, we've got a death row inmate who won a case in front of the Supreme Court. No, he's not being set free. The case was about whether or not a pastor could be with him, putting his hand on him and praying with him in the execution chamber. That story, your reaction, next. This is Pastor Dana Moore. He wants to be in the death chamber with John Henry Ramirez as he's being executed so he can touch him and pray with him during his execution. Seth Kovar from our great affiliate KRIS in Corpus Christi, Texas, has more tonight.
I thought it was a blessing to hear that the Supreme Court had sided with John.
And Pastor Dana Moore from the Second Baptist Church is once again preparing to be by the side of John Henry Ramirez as he's put to death. That was set to happen back in September, but hours beforehand, a court issued a stay to consider a lawsuit saying his religious rights were being violated.
What we've asked for is that I would be able to lay my hand on John, just to reach out. That's all it is, just to reach out and touch him, and then to pray with him and to pray over him in his last moments.
Even after Nuremberg, we allowed the Nazis to have spiritual advisors with them at the point in time at which they were executed.
That's one of the many arguments Ramirez's attorney, Seth Kretzer, made before the Supreme Court back in November. He hopes the justice's ruling will protect religious rights in the death chamber.
I don't know how it could be any more clear to the state of Texas that they need to stop trying to deny inmates the right to have their spiritual advisors with them at the point in time that they are executed.
The Texas Department of Criminal Justice would only release a statement. We respect the court's decision and will be making appropriate modifications to our practices to align with today's ruling. Family members of Pablo Castro didn't want to go on camera today. One did tell me they're disappointed that Ramirez will have so many accommodations at the time of his death when their loved one didn't. But Pastor Moore says when a new execution date is set, he'll be there, just like he's been at the dying bedsides of other members of his congregation.
Anytime I go visit in the hospital and somebody in near-death experience, I hold hands with family.
Big ruling by the Supreme Court in this case. Posted it on social media. What's your reaction? Do you think convicted killers who are about to be executed should have their spiritual advisor, someone with them, praying with them as they are executed? We begin with our 13th juror. Comment of the day from Lisa. If it doesn't cause any safety concerns for the person praying or others, why not? Who couldn't use prayers as they're ready to leave this world? Bernarda Villalona, your thoughts on this issue?
I don't have an objection to have your spiritual advisor next to you while you're about to see the last moments of your life being taken away from you. But then I start thinking, I'm like, well, if that's the case, what if they make like a loved one or someone they really care about, they become a spiritual advisor and now they're in the room? See, my mind starts thinking about some twisted stuff, the extreme. But in general, I have no objection to it.
Jay tonight, no, I highly doubt they afforded the victims with any request. Once their debt has been paid, they should have whomever they would like to pray over them. You know, the prayers could be before they enter the chamber, after they're dead. Ian Friedman, your thoughts?
I understand Jay's position. People are split on this one. But the First Amendment, the United States Constitution, clearly states that that there shall be no law that restricts an individual's exercise of religion. And it does not say, doesn't have an exception to inmates or those being put to death. And the reason that you have to uphold the law on those least desirable in this society is so that we have protections for all in society. So I understand the emotion here, but the law has to be seen more globally. And so I agree with the Supreme Court's decision in this case.
Lee tonight, I think to show compassion in those final moments is what makes society different than those who commit these horrible crimes. It's kind of like taking the high road. Brian Watkins, your thoughts?
You know, the essence of religion is forgiveness and repenting for your sins. And if he wants to repent his sins at his last moments, absolutely we should let him do that. And, you know, that is what our criminal justice system is supposed to be about, making you understand what you did was wrong and, you know, repent for your sins. So if it worked and he's going to do that on his final hours, then I guess that question is best answered by this silly question, which is, why not? What's the problem? Why not let him?
Nan tonight, he should have no right. The person he killed didn't have anyone he wanted by his side. And Bernarda, that's a common theme in a lot of this is these are the worst of the worst, by the way, on death row. It's not, you know, these are not the accidental cases that we were talking about earlier this hour. These are the worst of the worst. And Should society make more of this rule, or should it be the Supreme Court that makes the ultimate decision on who gets to be there in the final moment?
You know, like I stated earlier, if I were the family member of the person that was killed, I would be like, no one should be in the room with you. You need to die alone, and I need you to die in pain. But, you know, not being a member of that loved one family who passed away, I'm with Ian. The First Amendment allows for the protection of religion. So I think that they should be allowed to have someone there, their spiritual advisor, whoever it is, to accompany. And they're gone. They're about to be dead.
All right. Great job tonight. Bernardo Villalona, Ian Friedman, Brian Watkins. Great insight, perspective, everything that we need. We really need that. And tonight, you absolutely delivered. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, when we come back next hour, case we've been tracking here and following, the disappearance, abduction of Naomi Irion out in Nevada. There she is. We have some big breaking news in this case. Join us in the next hour in just a few moments. We'll have that big breaking news, and Naomi's mom will join us live.
sell-off buildings.
In Lyon County, Nevada, 18-year-old Naomi Irion was abducted in her car in a Walmart parking lot on March 12th. Tonight, new details revealed, and Naomi's mom joins us live to ask for the public's help in finding her daughter.
Please save my daughter and bring her home.
In tonight's Unsolved Case File in Indianapolis, Indiana, the murder of Angie Barlow. She was performing at a private party as a dancer when she disappeared. Then, after a tip, her body was found buried in a backyard across town from the party.
Once they get that key piece that they're looking for, there's going to be a lot of people that's facing a lot of charges.
In Seminole County, Florida, a man is murdered outside of a mosque. Then the suspect is tracked down in a Sam's Club parking lot. We take a look at the dramatic video with our own law enforcement experts.
When you see the body camera video, you see the way that this guy is acting. I mean, he wanted to be shot.
And in Lee County, Florida, officers respond to a domestic situation resulting in a manhunt as the suspect gets away. We break down what happened during crime time.
We have drones, aviation, everyone is out.
Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us here in Closing Arguments. We begin this hour with big breaking news. You know we've been following the story of Naomi Irion out in Nevada. She was abducted. There were videos. There were persons of interest. There was a video of a vehicle that we're looking for. And now, just within the last hour or so, this information coming to us from the Lyon County Sheriff, okay? On March 25th, 2022, LCSO, Lyon County Sheriff's Office, and assisting agencies have taken a suspect into custody. Do you hear me? They've taken a suspect into custody. They have also impounded a pickup truck that was possibly involved. We saw a picture of that pickup truck. We are still actively searching for Naomi Irion tonight. We'll have additional information available as soon as possible. Two huge takeaways from this breaking news. One, they've got a suspect in custody, but number two, still searching for Naomi. Now, for those of you not familiar with the story and some of the facts here, here's Eric Kuzmers, Lyon County Sheriff Detective.
At 05:23 hours is her last Snapchat ping. We know that she was active on social media up until that point, and active on her cell phone. At 05:24 hours, the suspect approaches Naomi's vehicle, and at 05:25 hours, Naomi's vehicle leaves the Walmart parking lot with the suspect driving the vehicle. On March 15, 2022, Naomi's vehicle is recovered, and we're currently processing all evidence with that. As you notice, it's been on social media that there's the way the suspect walks, his clothing description, all that stuff is imperative to leading us to a possible identification of the suspect. Here's a map provided to us from the FBI of Naomi's cell phone mapping images, basically showing she was active at the Walmart parking lot between 05:09 a.m. and 05:25 a.m. Lyon County, with assistance of the Washington County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue, Lyon County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue has conducted multiple searches through the air and on the ground looking for Naomi. Please contact us if anybody knows somebody who has access to the vehicle that we're looking for. It's a 2020 or newer 2500 or 3500 high country model. It's dark in color. If you know somebody who has that vehicle or has access to that vehicle during this time frame, please reach out to us. Because Naomi's 18 years old. She's approximately 5'11", approximately 240 pounds. She had brown hair and green eyes. She has a septum piercing and piercings in both of those nostrils. She also has a smiley face tattoo on her ankle after her ankle. And she was last seen with a dark colored purse. The images that have been previously released show her clothing description of a blue Panasonic shirt. She also had an iPhone on her person AirPods, and she's known to carry a fidget spinner. Our suspect that we released the videos and images of is an adult male, approximately 6 feet in height, and the clothing description speaks for itself in the videos.
Okay, now let me go through some of the other developments that occurred before the breaking news tonight. Yesterday at 1:25, the Lyon County Sheriff's Office released photos of a car. Let's take a look at it, okay? Because this could be very significant. They said it was in the Walmart parking lot moments before Naomi's abduction. Four-door sedan enters the East Walmart parking lot approximately 5:15 a.m. on March 12th. The vehicle drives around the median on the east side before parking at the southeast corner of the Walmart building. The vehicle is parked with the headlights on, and the suspect walks directly in front of that vehicle. So whoever in that vehicle is seeing the suspect. Well, then Thursday at 5 p.m., through your help, the Lyon County Sheriff releases this information. Through your help, we have identified the vehicle and the occupants in the Walmart video minutes before Naomi was abducted, and the investigation continues. So I am wondering if on Thursday at 5 p.m. you release information that you've identified someone who was right there, potentially witnessing the suspect, witnessing what happens. You finally are able to identify them, and now today they've taken a suspect into custody. Big, big developments here. So let's bring in our guests. Joining me in Clearwater, Florida, private investigator Mike Peasley is with us. In Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen. And in Portland, Oregon, podcaster Gray Hughes is also with us. You can catch him on YouTube. Make sure you do. He's been doing a deep dive into this story and every story that he covers. Gray, I want to begin with you and your reaction to this huge development that you actually called us up and said, make sure you guys know this is happening right now.
I just think it's amazing that it was the arrest was made so quickly after the identifying that individual in the parking lot. But I don't know if that's actually related to that. It just seems like a pretty big coincidence. But the very next day, there's an arrest made. I know that the I've had the family on, the brother and the sister on, and I really feel like I feel bad for them. But at least they've got an answer now that an arrest is made, and hopefully it leads to finding her. That's right. That's still a huge part of all this. Naomi has not been found, but a suspect is in custody. Mike Peasley, give us some perspective on how huge of a development this is tonight, and your thoughts about whether or not this arrest, when you arrest someone, how do you get them to give you the information that you're looking for, which is, where is Naomi?
Yeah, that's a good question right now. I was reading this and looking at this. Apparently she parked that vehicle in that parking lot quite often. And, was she a target from whatever day, up to this point of this arrest? And number two, then prior to hearing this information about her being arrested, I was saying, I wonder how many people they interviewed from that homeless camp. And is that subject part of them? I'm a little bit shocked how they got an arrest unless they got some type of evidence from or something like that. Pretty amazing. I'm a little bit taken back that they've got somebody in custody over this right this second.
Yeah, it's the breaking news this hour. Someone is in custody, a suspect, for the abduction of Naomi Irion, but she has not been found. Jason Jensen, things are starting to click. The one thing that I like that they're doing out in Lyon County is they're asking for help, because the public is ready, willing, and able to help in all of these cases. Sometimes they hold back a little too much. They release these videos. I think they have more evidence. But by releasing these videos, now all of a sudden, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, they've got a suspect in custody.
Yes, I think it's always wise to release these videos up front early on before memories fade, because if this was somebody passing through town, it'd be way too quickly forgotten. But, obviously with somebody recognizing either the guy's jacket, how he walked, or even the vehicle, if that's how they identified this guy, it was really smart for them to get this information out so quickly.
Yeah, great. Awareness is a huge part of all these cases. I mean, it amazes me how unaware sometimes people are. The witnesses who saw something may not even have known that they saw the suspect and may not even have known that this case was going on. Who knows what news they're watching, who they're listening to. So the awareness of all these cases is so paramount in finding clues and getting people to come forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people on YouTube that do true crime YouTube live shows, we do a good job of, kind of keeping live information going. I do think it's a little strange that the person who parked their car there, it took them putting out a call to that person to come forward. It seems like, they were right there. They seem like there's somebody that maybe was even waiting for the shuttle. So, if you're somebody out there and you witness something, don't be scared to come to law enforcement. Just come forward and it'll help dramatically.
Gray, dig into that a little bit more, the shuttle, because that's, I think, an important part of all this, right? Why Naomi was there so early in the morning.
Yeah, she left her home at about 4:50, went to a gas station, got some snacks, and then drove over there and was over to the Walmart and was there from probably 5:05 to 5:25 is when she was actually abducted, and the shuttle leaves at 6:30 or 5:30 to 5:45 in that time frame. So this person seemed to be waiting there for her specifically because they didn't do anything to that one car that pulled up. They didn't abduct that person, and then they went south and then stood there staring at her vehicle. It's pretty creepy to look at.
Yeah, Mike Peasley, you look at this, you're wondering, is it targeted? If it's targeted, you got to find out what was going on in Naomi's life. And if it's random, it's completely random. I think those cases are much more difficult to put the pieces together, but apparently they were able to put these pieces together, even though the surveillance video does not show the suspect's face.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Again, going back, and I'm glad they got somebody in custody. At least there's, some relief to their family knowing that there's somebody in custody. But big question here is, you go back to these surveillance cameras. So many of these places only hold those surveillance cameras for 5 days. I certainly would be checking those surveillance cameras, see if that subject was around in the parking lot days prior to, this happening, and see if they captured him on surveillance at any point at that. So, without a body right now, I mean, the big thing that, again, before I came on tonight and before you broke that news, I kept thinking this homeless camp, somebody just got in the car and possibly took the car and took off. But we don't have her right now. So I don't know. And how much traffic, how many other cars
absolutely
are stopping there to get on that bus? That would be one of my questions.
Jason Jensen, now we've got a suspect, right? He may or may not talk. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But now you've got to track where this man was, when he was there, before she's abducted, and then try to track where he went afterwards if you're going to have any chance at finding out what happened to Naomi.
Well, and I think that the next move for law enforcement would be to do a tower dump, specifically tracking wherever this individual's cell phone went, if he actually has a cell phone.
Big part of this. All right, this truck is in the middle of all of it. And Gray, I know one thing we wanted to talk about tonight was, I know you took a look at that pickup truck when it was, a key piece of evidence in all this. And I know that you did something, and explain to us exactly what you did here and what it means, what the significance is, and how it ties into investigating this case and where Naomi may be.
Well, at first it seemed like right after she was abducted, maybe he transferred her to his truck and took off. And then somebody on my YouTube channel mentioned that it's light outside, and I was like, huh, that's interesting because the sun comes up at 6:55. So that means it's already after she was abducted at 5:25. We're already looking at about an hour and a half before the sun comes up. So I actually said, well, let me figure out what time this is. And I actually had already located where the surveillance shot was after her car was found. I guess that they linked the two because it was near there. And it turns out that fence that you see by the truck right there was right there. When you go to Street View, it's right there at the Sherwin-Williams plant there. And then on the behind the truck, see that little slanted, I don't know what you call it, a fence rail there? I found that spot right there. So that's exactly where the truck is. So that circle you see on the lower right-hand corner is where the truck was. Okay, as it was driving by, the lower yellow pin is where her vehicle was found. Okay, so what I did to determine the time was I took an overhead shot of Google Earth, made sure it was north-south oriented, brought it into a program called 3D Studio Max that has a sunlight system that you can put in the exact date, time zone, and also the GPS coordinates. So I have it right at that location, and then doing experiments by rendering and rendering out the shadows. I determined that it was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon when that car is driving by. So whether that was on the 12th, 13th, or 14th, I don't know, but they're linking it. So I'm assuming it's on. I'm assuming it's the 12th. That's what my theory is. It's on the 12th. But it's amazing that it was actually at 3 o'clock. So that's 10 hours.
Right. What's going on for those 10 hours?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Jason Jensen, that 10-hour time period, significant here.
Oh, yeah. Like on the defense side, they're going to say there's no immediate linkage between the two because there's so much time attenuated between her abduction and the sighting of the truck. But obviously, there's something there more that the police is not revealing to the rest of us that otherwise led them to this decision because a lot of vehicles, I'm sure, pass that location every day.
Mike Peasley, trying to figure out what's going on, where she was taken, and then ultimately what happened. That's what the case is turning on now. He's a suspect, may or may not speak. He could be telling him everything right now. That is very possible. It is very possible. But if that doesn't happen, I think you've got to search every security camera in the area, try to spot these vehicles, and try to piece together a much more specific timeline to try to track movement here.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it'd be interesting to find out if some of the information they got was off surveillance cameras from Sherwood-Williams there where the car was located, found. And I'm sure there's a lot of businesses up and down there. So, yeah, the tracking of that vehicle is imperative right now. But that time span is what's getting me right now.
10 hours, a lot of bad things can happen in 10 hours. All right, our guests are staying with us, Mike Peasley, Jason Jensen, Gray Hughes. When we come back, more of the big breaking news tonight, folks. A suspect in custody, Lyon County, Nevada, for the abduction of Naomi Irion.
relief today.
Yes, I would encourage anybody to come forward who had access. Anybody, it could be somebody borrowed your vehicle. It could be somebody, your neighbor drives this vehicle. If you know somebody who drives this vehicle or had access to this vehicle during this time frame, that's what we're asking you to come forward and speak with us. Please notify us through Secret Witness at 775-322-4900 or the Lyon County Sheriff's Office at 775-463-6600 or through the email address at detective@lyon-county.org.
Big breaking news tonight in the case involving the abduction of Naomi Irion. The sheriff in Lyon County, Nevada, just releasing this information within the last hour or so. On March 25th, 2022, LCSO, the Lyon County Sheriff's Office, and assisting agencies have taken a suspect into custody. We have also impounded a pickup truck that was possibly involved. We are still actively searching for Naomi Irion. We will have additional information available as soon as possible. This is huge news. The search is still continuing for Naomi, but they have a suspect in custody. My guess, they are interrogating that suspect unless he said those magical words, "I'd like to talk to a lawyer." Let's hope he didn't do that so investigators can get information from this suspect. I want to remind you a little bit about the timeline of this case, what happened, when it happened. March 12th at 5:09 a.m., Naomi parked at the Fernley Walmart. 5:09 to 5:23 a.m., Naomi was active on social media, right? Most people are when you're waiting to do something. She's waiting to get on the shuttle to go to work. 5:23 a.m. was her last Snapchat ping. 5:24 a.m., a suspect was seen on video at Naomi's vehicle. At 5:24 a.m., Naomi's vehicle leaves the Walmart. Her vehicle then recovered on March 15th. That's the timeline. Okay, folks, still with us tonight, private investigators Mike Peasley, Jason Jensen, and podcaster Gray Hughes. And joining us now tonight in Reno, Nevada, special guest Naomi's mom, Diana, is with us. Diana, first of all, on behalf of everyone at Court TV, our thoughts are with you, our prayers are with you in the search for your daughter. But your reaction tonight, when did you hear the news from the sheriff that they have a suspect in custody tonight?
I actually got a text from my son just before the press release went out, and I was actually broadcasting with Pascal on YouTube at the time. So if you rewatch the broadcast, you can see the moment that I got the text, because you can see the shock on my face when that happens.
So what are your thoughts tonight? I mean, this is a big development. What are your thoughts? What are your hopes as we sit here tonight with Naomi still missing, but someone being interrogated, hopefully?
Well, I have two sides of a coin. I'm jubilant and terrified. I'm jubilant because they caught someone and have a truck that matches the description, but I'm terrified it's not the right one.
Can you tell me a little bit about Naomi? Because I want people invested in this story. I want them to know who she is, because the search for her is continuing tonight, and we will continue to follow the story and keep her picture out there. Folks are doing it all around the country. Folks like Gray Hughes on his podcast as well. Tell me about her.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vinnie, for giving me this opportunity. Naomi is an incredibly brilliant person, both academically and artistically. She plays musical instruments, the piano, the ukulele. She sings beautifully. She's a talented software coder, a developer. She won awards in high school for it. She is kind and empathetic to others. She is She is a very staunch justice seeker and defender of the weak. She stands up for people who need her help. She is incredibly generous and giving to others. She gives of herself, both of her time, her effort, and her finances, to the point of detriment of her own well-being, because her outgoing concern for others overpowers her own sense of self. Naomi is incredibly charismatic. Everyone who meets her loves her. She reaches into people and pulls them into her incredibly loving circle. She loves fiercely, and she will defend you, and with her every breath. And she's a bright light that she burns brightly. The people around her notice her when she walks into a room, and you miss her when she leaves.
What an amazing tribute. And, you know, as I hear your voice, I know where all those characteristics in Naomi come from. You know about the apple in the tree.
Thank you.
Was there anything going on in her life? Was she being stalked, harassed, or was anything else going on? Because I think one of the issues in the case, people are wondering, was she targeted? Was there something happening, or was this some random evil man who abducted her?
To my knowledge, she was not being stalked or harassed at any time around her kidnapping. There was a sexual harassment complaint at her place of employment. That was months ago, and it was handled. As far as I know, this is a stranger that found her somehow. I don't know.
And have you gotten any additional information from investigators tonight?
No, just the fact that they have both the suspect and a vehicle. The vehicle's been impounded, so I imagine that CSI is going through it with a fine-tooth comb right now. And the suspect is in custody, and I don't know where the suspect is in custody. I don't know if it's here in Fernley or if it's in Reno. I don't know.
And how's the rest of the family tonight?
We're all feeling very on edge and keyed up because we need news. We need to find her. We need to know. But we're also really scared that it's the wrong person and that we have to start the process all over again from the beginning. It's the height of the emotion is it's wrenches your chest apart and makes you feel like you're having a heart attack and you're about to die.
Well, again, our thoughts are with you tonight. Gray Hughes, podcaster out of YouTube, been covering this story. I know you've been talking to the family. I'm not sure if you've spoken with Diana before, but your thoughts on this moment.
Yeah, it's just, I know exactly what they feel like. I mean, I cover so many cases, and I think missing person cases are almost the worst that any family can go through. It's, you're always sort of holding your breath. And, you know, some of these families do it for years and years and years, and they never get an answer. So I'm just hoping that there's an answer soon.
Absolutely. Jason Jensen, they have a vehicle. And as Diana indicated, I'm sure they're going over it. Hopefully that vehicle can tell us some bit of a story and can lead investigators to wherever Naomi is.
Well, yes, exactly. And since it's a newer model, I would imagine it's got Navstar on board. So whether it's activated or not, it will have GPS history for that vehicle. So as long as they can access that, it should be helpful for law enforcement to determine where that vehicle's been in the recent history.
Diana, before you go tonight, I want to give you an opportunity to speak out loud. And if in fact this suspect is the correct person, the message that you have for him tonight?
To my daughter's kidnapper, you need to tell us where she is. Things will go much better for you if we find her safe and alive, because this case is very big, and agencies all the way up to the highest level in the federal government are paying attention to this. And if you do not give up her location, the weight that will fall on you is severe. You must give up my daughter's location. Please give my daughter back to me. Please.
Diana, thank you so much. We'll stay in contact with you, but please know that we are thinking of you. We are thinking of Naomi. Gray Hughes, appreciate your time tonight and your insight and your continued coverage of this story as well. Jason and Mike, I know you're staying with us. God bless you and your family,
Vinnie.
Diana. God bless your family. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
back. It's time to open up tonight's Unsolved Case File. This is where we're asking for your help in solving a case. You may have a piece of information. You may remember something. Maybe you heard something at the time you didn't think it was important, or at the time you were afraid to come forward. Well, now is the time. Tonight, it's the murder of Angie Barlow. Cornelius Hocker, reporter for WRTV in Indianapolis, our affiliate, has this extremely tragic story which goes back all the way to 2016.
Once I got involved, there was just no turning back.
Lauren Van Sickle is talking about Angie Barlow, the 23-year-old woman who disappeared in late 2016. Her missing person case turned into a murder investigation in the summer of 2017 after an agonizing 8 months for her friends and family. From then to now, Lauren continues to bring new light to Angie's unsolved murder, highlighting the case and the locally produced podcast, Crime Pursuit. There's going to be 3 episodes on Angie's murder. In the first, they discuss how Angie ended up at the last place she was known to be alive, the Landmark Apartments and townhomes on the far north side of Indianapolis.
This would be the first time she would have done a private party for someone she didn't actually know.
Angie was an exotic dancer working at Club Rio. She had just returned from a costly trip to Florida and needed money. Lauren says the same person who set up this private party had actually tried to set up a similar thing 2 weeks earlier. This time, the arrangement worked out.
She arrived to the home. She sent a text and said, here's the address of where I'm at in case I go missing, which sadly turned into a very prophetic message to her friend.
Angie was unsure about going to the private party. The friend she messaged says she begged Angie not to go, but Angie, feeling like she could handle herself, decided to anyway.
We know other people were in that apartment because she walked into that apartment and was comfortable at one point to get changed, take the Snapchat picture and send it out.
This screenshot from a Snapchat video would end up being the last thing Angie ever shared online.
We don't believe Angie ever left that apartment alive. So we fully believe that that night was the last night of her life.
Police haven't said what they believe happened to Angie between 11:30 that night and 3:30 the next morning. That's when Angie's car was recorded by security cameras leaving the Landmark Apartments, followed closely by another car.
One gate opening, like not a pause even to wait for the gate to close, and another car, but I'm talking 2 cars fitting through that gate motion at one time.
Angie was usually in constant contact with her friends, so it was odd when she didn't meet up with them at Club Rio after the party like they planned.
Normally when she did things like this, when she was leaving, she would have called and said, this is how much money I made in tips. Like, it went really well.
One of her friends became extremely worried the following afternoon, more than 16 hours since anyone had heard from Angie. That friend eventually called her parents to let them know something was up.
They're literally some of the strongest people I've ever met.
This began an 8-month ordeal for Angie's family. Posting on Facebook, putting up billboards, banners, and flyers, pleading with the public for any information that could help them find their loved one. They talked to RTV6 several times after Angie disappeared, including right after it was confirmed that the body found buried behind this home was indeed Angie's. Police did interview the people who invited Angie to dance at their party. However, at that time, it was just a missing person case. So even though the things they told detectives didn't add up, police say they need more evidence before they can make any arrest.
Maybe you didn't know what you were being made to do. Maybe not all participants did this willingly. You could have been forced. If that's the case, law enforcement needs to hear that. People need to hear that.
Okay, there were people there at that apartment. Maybe it's time that you speak up. 317-262-8477, 317-262-8477. That's the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department Crime Stoppers. The other thing is, people who know things sometimes speak to other people completely not connected to it, and you hear it. Hearsay is allowed on the tip line, folks. Hearsay is permitted. Okay, still with us tonight, private investigators Mike Peasley and Jason Jensen. And joining us now in Muncie, Indiana, special guest Angie Barlow's mom, Christina Kramer, is with us. Christina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let me start here. And any updates, any new information coming your way in this case? Any reason to be more optimistic tonight than the last time we profiled this story?
Hopefully. We did have someone contact me the other day that said that they had some evidence and that they were going to turn that over to the lead detective, Detective Torres. And I've reached out to Detective Torres, and I haven't heard anything back from him yet.
Did any indication of what type of evidence, physical evidence? They witnessed something? Did they give you any indication, at least the type of evidence they were talking about?
They did not say. The only thing that they told me was that they were scared for their life.
Wow. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Christina, can I ask you this? In the piece, and I know a lot of people are talking about this online, the people who invited her to the party, is one of them a rapper?
She's trying to be, yes.
Okay, because she's posting songs out there, and that's another part of all of this.
Yes.
From your perspective, what do you think? Because I know you've been waiting so many years for an answer. It seems like it's right there, right? It's like right in front of us. Do you believe? Go ahead.
Oh, I think they're guilty. I don't know what I understand that they're taking their time doing things. They don't want anything getting lost on technicalities and stuff like that. But I think that they have pretty much all that they're going to get. And, I mean, these people, they've never been questioned in her homicide, only the missing persons investigation. They've never questioned anyone in her homicide, only the missing persons investigation.
And do you know, did they go through that apartment at all when it was a missing persons investigation, or they didn't?
They did. It took them some time to do it. One of Angie's friends, it was the next day, she had went to the apartment, and the apartment had been cleaned out by the time she got there. But Angie was a reported missing person for 4 days before any investigators even looked into her whereabouts.
Okay. So you can clean things out, but sometimes, Mike Peasley, when it comes to forensic evidence, you can find things that aren't visible to the naked eye.
That's for sure. I am shocked that they didn't issue a search warrant or get a search warrant. I mean, there's a big difference between just being allowed to go in and look around and executing a search warrant and bringing forensics in, especially if there's any type of evidence that there was something that happened that night. I am shocked as we sit here tonight and cannot believe that they haven't picked up Brandon and Raven and brought them in and questioned them over this. I mean, when Brandon's relatives at one point just so happened rented that apartment or that house where the so-called anonymous tip came in, and that's where her body was. Are you kidding me? And yet Brandon and Raven are nowhere to be found right now, from my understanding. I think that they would have enough PC right now to pick them up and bring them in. It's just too odd to me. You got an anonymous tip, you got a body at a location that one of the relatives, Brandon's relatives, live there. And my thing right now is how long did that guy live in that house, or when did he get into that house before that anonymous tip came in? There's a lot of things here that are just not adding up.
There is a lot, and there are some videos being posted on on social media and other spots from this rapper. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back. Everyone is staying with us. Mike Peasley, Jason Jensen, and Christina Kramer. We'll be right back, folks. Again, if you have any information, pick up the phone tonight, make the call.
Right now.
Welcome back to our Unsolved Case File segment. We're still taking a look at the murder of Angie Barlow. 2016, she was found buried. But before she was dead and buried, she was invited to a party. And she was working the party as a dancer. Still with us tonight, private investigators Mike Peasley, Jason Jensen, and Angie's mom, Christina Kramer. Jason Jensen, I want to ask you, as Christina was referencing in the last segment, the host or hostess of this party who invited Angie wants to be a rapper, has been seemingly posting a lot of videos with some lyrics that seem to make some potential references to this case. To me, all of that could potentially add to the PC probable cause that Mike Peasley was talking about.
Oh, exactly. I mean, remember, these are statements of a potential suspect. So clearly they can be construed as admissions, if not confessions, if they're really related to the crime being prosecuted. Here we have, for instance, one reference in one of her songs is that she says, if you Google me, you're going to see that it says I'm a killer, and then she goes on to say that her name is Raven Miller. So, and then the other song that's really significant is where she refers to smoking on a Barlow, which is usually gang slang referring to somebody that's already passed away from a rival gang, that you're really bringing disrespect and light to the living members of that family of the person fallen. So, you know, she seems to be bragging about these incidences. She posts on social media that all of her songs are based on real life scenarios in her life. So, yeah, if I was the police investigator and you were the prosecutor assigned to this case, I'd have this file on your desk in the morning.
Christina Kramer, Angie's mom, we have less than a minute left, but I wanted to give you a final opportunity to speak to whomever is watching tonight. The killer could be watching tonight, and what message you have for them.
The message I have for the people who killed her is I'll fight tooth and nail to make sure that they get the death penalty in this. Not only was my daughter missing and found murdered, there seems to be other people who are just coincidentally coming up dead, who have connections to these certain individuals. I know I'm not the only one who would like to see them go away for a really long time. People know where they're at. They're not, they're not missing. Baron and Raven, they got divorced. He's back in Indianapolis. She's in Phoenix with someone else now, trying to start up her rap career. And a lot of the songs that she has out, she spends a lot of time talking about killing people.
Christina, our thoughts are with you. Thank you so much. Jason Jensen, Mike Peasley, appreciate it. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We'll be right back.
Trans health brand in America.
This is Jaden Wilkerson, 14 years old, missing from Santobia, Mississippi since January 16th. Please, if you see Jaden, call 1-800-THE-LOST. You can call 911, or you can call the Senatobia Police Department. The number's on the screen. That's it for tonight. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. And as always, don't forget to hug the kids.
Investigators described it as a 1-in-a-million chance. A tiny manufacturing flaw on an envelope exposed a murderer who was willing to kill innocent victims to get at the one person he wanted dead.